Okay, we've got the group back together. Nothing like doing this live, hey, to have a few technical glitches on the way. Let's pick up where we were, but I'm going to move us through a little bit because we've still got a little bit of time left. So what we were talking about was how do we drive action from win-loss? So I think all of us love win-loss. We'll do win-loss. And all of that data is in reports, readouts, insights, and so on. But what we were hearing from was how do we get those out of those insights, out of those kind of deliverables that are great for us, for win-loss practitioners, and out to the teams. So we heard a little bit about that, creating custom decks for different audiences by using self-serve tools where people can query this. And then Andres was talking about actually having PMs and product marketers assign actions against what they're going to do and change due to win-loss insights. So let's pick up there. I'd love to know a bit more about that. And how are we sharing insights with the organization? What are some of the approaches we're taking? Are we hosting kind of monthly meetings and readouts? Do you put snippets into Slack, Teams, email? What have you found the best way to kind of drive action? So maybe I will nominate you, Ben, to start with, and then we'll go around.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the easiest way and the lowest hanging fruit is win stories. Developing a win story format, something that speaks about displacing a competitor, winning against a given competitor head to head is often something where you're already probably running the report. You probably have some level of data. Even if you can't run a full analysis, you might have win notes in your CRM, for example. And when I first started, we were just transforming win notes into actual win stories that could be like reusable assets that could be associated to a competitor. As reports have gotten, more comprehensive and cover more data, those deliverables only become better. And we embed those at a competitor guide level. We embed them at a platform level. They're also indexable by our enterprise AI search tools. Beyond that, it's often really helpful if you can even embed like specific quotes, direct POV from your buyers, like not just talking about the reasons why we win, but associating those to what buyers are actually saying. And then, like forwarding that into questions that people can ask and other things that they can do. That's often what we found to be the lowest hanging fruit. When it comes to losses, it's not as helpful to aggregate those kinds of pieces of information. So those are more helpful for product leaders and executives and other audiences who just want to understand, like, why did we lose or win this deal? Like what's going on here? What are the key differences? Again, if you build enough of a database and repository of these things, you can be very selective around, the best assets to share with your go-to-market field teams, and then the corollary, like the best assets to help answer questions that your executives and other audiences may have internally. So it goes a little bit of both ways, but stories are the low-hanging fruit, really easy to repeat, and you can develop prompts or whatever you want to streamline the creation of those things over time.
Nice. And then Hila, what about you? You've obviously worked with a whole bunch of different companies, lots of different win-loss kind of engagements. How do you make the results sticky and drive action?
So I'll speak about the technical ways, which is the channel and app, but I will say that driving the conversation very early with the salespeople. So my biggest win or my biggest tip, I will say, is to have a sales conversation very early on. I usually speak with about 20% of the top seller of a company and make them my champions. So they are now working with me. They know everything ahead. They help me to really think about the questions, what they're trying to achieve, and how is it going to help them later. And then when I do whatever I do, to share about the channel plan, they actually being the one that push them to these teams and friends and peers. So we do multiple stuff. One, we start obviously with the regular battle cards, but what we do with that, we have a channel in Slack called Heard in the Field. And we kind of bring the conversation to life. It's not just like the specific win-loss times, like 3 times a year, but we actually have a regular conversation. What did you hear in the conversation? What happened lately? What changed in the competitor? So everybody kind of like having the conversation so we can digest that to everything we do and keep the track on sending this every 2 weeks. And how we do that. So we keep updating the Slack channel. We have the Salesforce specific deals on opportunities in which we tag and add the specific knowledge we have. And then we create a newsletter. So sales in our case have the scoop, which is a newsletter going up every 2 weeks, and we add wins. So here is a seller that used our latest insight, and here is a great deal that he got in better velocity, time to deal, and actually value for deal. So we really celebrate a win. I know that one of the things we say that we never do a finger pointing for stuff that didn't. So we actually find the places that was impacted, and we kind of double down on those. So the newsletter is huge for us. Another place for us is seismic pages or HiSpot. We actually go to the ICP pages, to places that people go in, see their cheat sheet, and come to really learn how to speak with their ICPs and competitors. And we ensure that all of them are updated with actionable, sliceable, I would say, insight about what to do tomorrow morning. When you speak with ICP in this segment, here's what you must say, or never miss XYZ. Very short, very adjustable. So for me, out of the readouts, this is the most, I would say, usable elements that they adjust. And another small element is speaking with their leader. So I'm working with the sales leader to ensure that they actually not just embed it in the overall playbook, but they coach their specific people individually by places they can learn from, go on conversation, win-loss insights, and how they can have their own specific skill set refined for the next conversations.
That is really interesting. And putting this together maps with some conversations I had here at Compete Week with other customers in person, which is win-loss. One of the challenges is kind of earning the trust of the sales team. It can be hugely valuable for sales, but it doesn't land if salespeople feel like you're, as a kind of win-loss practitioner, judging their work. And what I've heard is that the win stories and the scoop and every 2-week updates on what is working is one of the ways we can do that and kind of make that sticky. And then, Hila, what you said about bringing in sales leaders really early to the process. I love that. In the interest of time, I'm going to move us on to a little bit, which is win-loss. I find it's super valuable, rich data, but it's unstructured qualitative data. And there's lots of it. And with AI and all the advancements in AI, I've heard a few tools mentioned, like Ben, you were mentioning Glean, and a bunch of others were coming up. So I'd love to know what you all are finding as tools you're using to kind of improve getting win-loss insights out into kind of stakeholders' hands. And Andres, let's start with you maybe. What's your insight there?
So for this, I think like AI has just changed the reality for all of us as practitioners. And one thing that I've been using a lot, like at our company, the AI tool that we can use is Copilot. And for me has been really, really important to just like help me find trends through the program. Like we have like one-offs, like we have our individual reports there, but then like on the finding the trends, like you start to see like, oh, this is interesting, like I start to hear this thing comes along. But then when you start getting into programs like Ben's was sharing like 150 interviews per year, how do you grab like the amount of like words, conversations that you have and kind of create like trends? That's really, really hard. So what AI can help us do is just find from the past amount of information that we have, and you can throw any hypothesis, right? Like I think this is coming a lot, like help me organize with what are we finding through this? Like, do you find, is this like more prevalent in certain segment? Is it more prevalent in certain solutions? So you start talking as if it was a person, right? And if it was your assistant, it can help you like create like, you know, from like your hypothesis, like just like more structure findings, and also start to say like, is this like a one-off or are we seeing a trend? And by trend we say how much number, how much impact, like are we saying like, is this like small deals or are we seeing this in like two very big deals? So those are things that for me have been really, really impactful. And when I'm creating the quarterly results of the program, it just helped me go from a individual conversation to just like what I'm finding in 20, 15 interviews that I'm doing per quarter. So that's been super, super changing for my program.
And it sounds like you're using Copilot, but Ben, you mentioned Glean, which kind of has a similar way of working. How do you use it? Like, do you use it for a similar thing to put together quarterly reports, or is it more dynamic?
That's a really good question. So here's the challenge with LLMs. If you upload a bunch of stuff into an LLM, or you connect your Google Drive or your Slack or whatever to your LLM, the LLM is really powerful in its ability to search through a broad distribution of tools and go relatively deep. The hard part is the LLM can't by itself, even with like prompting, it's not really good at sorting by relevancy and recency. It kind of just grabs at the first thing that matches the criteria, like a search query or something, and then it tries to surface to you, and it makes a hypothesis. It tries to forcibly connect, and that's why sometimes if you like search something, you may be like, oh, this is hallucinating. That's not actually what I was looking for, or it wasn't like, that's not correct. Like that often comes about. So what we do is we often have to structure these things into agents. For example, like a tool like Glean will offer you the ability to create a step-by-step hierarchy. It'll give you the ability to say, okay, I don't want you to look through everything. I want you to prioritize X, Y, and Z sources. Maybe you can go further and you can even create a collection of assets that you wanted to specifically search from. And so there's a way for you at the front end as the practitioner to define, okay, these are the spaces that I want you to focus the search for these kinds of queries and prompts on. And then beyond that, oftentimes you have to add in considerations for, maybe you want to add a step in that process for, I want it to think before it creates like an actual response. I want it to focus on these types of areas, or if this is for a sales audience, I want it to consider this type of language that it can use, or these kinds of outputs that it should consistently generate. So, and then I saw a question about trends as well. Is it cool, Matthew, if I like quickly answer that?
Yeah. So we had this great question of how do you prompt AI to identify trends? So yeah, tell us more.
I mean, it really depends on what you're looking for. Like, I think personally, like agents are good if you want to ask a specific question to a very specific underlying data set that's continually evolving. Chat is better, especially if you use something like ChatGPT or an equivalent, is better if you want to do a real-time search for a specific query that might even be outside the context of the knowledge you have within your internal database. And so if my product team came to me and asked like, hey, why are we like, tell me about like product reasons why we're winning and losing deals, I might actually go to Salesforce first and be more purposeful about pulling the types of deals that I think are most relevant to the kind of query they're asking. I'd make sure that there's fields for things like win and loss reasons, for sub reasons, for buyer feedback, for win-loss notes from the seller. And then we try and use those. So it really depends on what you're looking for. You can't just expect one tool to do everything for you. And you also have to do a little bit of work as the human at the beginning to make sure that the data set that you're giving access to the LLM is actually something that it can hone in on and not get super lost in the weeds for. So it's hard to specify without like knowing exactly what kind of trends you're looking for, but that's my general principles. I don't know if Andres or Hila would add anything to that.
Yeah, I agree. And I also like what you said earlier about having a set of data that is huge. Sometimes I can say about myself, I used to think that if you're having a huge data set or a lot of elements, you're actually going to get more findings, which is not. What I really found is that when you're not specific, you get too many ideas that many of them are not factual. So what helped me to think even about trends is to build my flow not with AI tool, is to start small and say, is it going to create an impact? What I think about it, is it going to be revenue lever, something like win rate, deal size, cycle length, velocity, element like churn? What is going to be the level of impact, and should we act on it? And then I think about the timing, what happened in the past 30, 60, 90, let's say 120 days. And I'm asking myself, do I see this element coming in multi-source? So not just like one element as an evidence, but I want to see, is it coming back in buyer review? Is it coming back in the seller's input and the recording, and the outcomes come from the CRM? And why am I saying that? Because when I look at all this together, I can put a flow about what I assume are the trending or the element I put in AI as a theme coming back to that, slice and dice with the AI tool, but with very clear prompt about what we're trying to achieve, and really test it on small batches. So for me, I don't know if it's random. Sometimes I see something repeatable, and then I batch it, and using that to ensure that I do testing on small groups of like segments. And this is something that's helpful for us to test, to check, and to ensure that it's not one-off or something that is anomaly, but more of a trend. We can actually, come back to leadership and speak about it. And sometimes in interesting cases, we change segmentation in the company because of that. And we go deeper to sub-segment, to a place that we actually update investor deck, or we really updated elements that come from leadership. But before we do that, we really ensure that the flow is right and that we start to spot it before we just say, did the AI digest that from a big set pools of data?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting to me is how, Ben, you put it so well, and I'm just copying you, but AI is great at coming with like a really credible sounding answer, but it's still on us to do a lot of the logic work behind the scenes. Like, should you be focusing on, you said, a set collection of, recently lost deals or high value deals, or either like the subsections of deals? I think that's like a good piece of advice for anyone using AI, like to do your analysis, that it's part of the way, but it's kind of not everything. We're not fully using the robots just yet.
Great. And I will just add one thing. In my spare time, I'm trying to vibe code some of the go-to-market approaches and what we do as a 5As. And I can say that even when you vibe code, even when you go deep to that and you put all the sets in place, you still really need the elements of human in the loop and the logic and to bring in the flows. It's not that the vibe coding is going to change the way we solve. It's going to kind of adapt and optimize the way we think and planning.
Yeah, like who else is using vibe coding your own solutions for win-loss or getting these kind of insights into the go-to-market hands? Is that just an Hila thing?
I haven't.
No.
Can't speak to that.
Okay, this time next year we'll do this session. So I wanted to move on to like how you're using win-loss as strategic differentiator in terms of like CI data. So what's your take, Ben, on using win-loss as a differentiated form of CI data and how that helps you kind of hone the go-to-market approach?
What's my thought on using win-loss as a differentiated form of insight? I just think about it this way. If your company is a car, right, and like the direction is the strategy that your executives and other teams are making decisions on, hey, we should go here, we should go there, we should add more people to the car, we should make a bigger car, whatever it might be. Like win-loss is just the fuel. It's one source of fuel for you to get where you want to go. It helps people make better decisions because they just have better insights. Like if Docebo is a public company, we have no shortage of analysts and advisors, board members, like a lot of people providing strategic high-level direction. They have our CEOs talking to our biggest customers. I'm not providing additional value by telling them things they already know from sources they already have. But what they don't have and what's impossible for them is we're over 4,000 customers today. Every year we try and add 20% additional, customers and revenue to our organization. Like as all those customers come in, and for the ones that don't, there's a missing perspective that we as practitioners have the ability to add. And there's a portion of that, a huge portion that's competitive, but even more, it's just the fuel that allows us to do things. And so the best thing you can do for yourself is it's a bit of upfront work, but it's in developing a system by which you can identify which deals are the best targets. And that's, just takes time in seat to understand, okay, like who's our ideal buyer, what's an ideal deal, who's an ideal competitor to look at, which competitors are most significant. And then the best of those, you'll only convert at best, 10 to 20% of the best ones into interviews that you can generate insights from. Like that's the fuel that you can provide to your company as an organization that they won't get anywhere else. And so that's just the way I think about it. It's and knowing which criteria matter is where you come in as a functional expert. Knowing which deals matter, what criteria matter, what you can use to query from the thousands of deals you have in your CRM to the few dozens or hundreds that really matter. And then from there, what are we learning from those? I think is the best way to approach that. But I'd be curious what Andres or anyone else thinks as well.
I do like your analogy, Ben, and I was thinking the same on like, like they say that data is the new oil and walled gardens are built on their proprietary data. They have something that is unique for them, and that's what we're doing here. We're building our like for us TransUnion only type of oil, where this is helping us empower everything that we do internally. Same as like our Salesforce data. This is only available to us, and like we are the only ones that can access it. So through Winloss, we are building that kind of proprietary data that is just so rich. Like having the experience of a buyer go through buying not only from us but like from our competitors and coming back to us and telling us like, hey, this is what I liked about this competitor, you guys are not doing that. I'm still going with you, but these guys, they're doing that thing that is just like really flashy, is really interesting. So just having that client that represents like sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars tell us like this is something that I found interesting, makes us think like how many of our lost deals was because of that, or how many of the deals that we are not seeing through our funnel were because we don't have that. So those kind of insights are what we don't, where we're not able to see, right? If we think of like an iceberg, like we get like, what we all can see is like we can go to our competitor's website, we can see like what is on ChatGPT, all of these AI tools, but these kind of things like you're not gonna find it anywhere. So this is so interesting for the all the internal teams because this is something that is unique to us. So I really like that analogy, and I'm gonna keep using that.
I love this as well.
And then I was wondering, like, how do you have all this rich win-loss data? I think a lot of CI folks, product marketers, they think I really need to impact this at a C-suite level. I'm hearing something through win-loss that kind of needs to go above just product feedback. What have you all found? And maybe I'll kick off with Hila. How have you found the best way to kind of present that out to a C-suite audience? Is it more of a synthesis? Is it single stories and sound bites? Like what's working in your experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that this one is always broader because it's always the question, how do I even think about the C-suite? What do they care about? What are the KPIs? And it's come along to everything PMM should do. So I'll go a step back. Even when I think about OKRs, even when I think about like everything that the Department of PMM should do, all of this should come and lead back to these KPIs that the CEO and his team care about. And when you started to speak this language, when you started to think about revenue impact, churn decrease, when you started to understand the number of units sold or all the elements they care about that really impact and move the needle, you think about win-loss as a tool to engage for the same thing. So yes, I have my own report for leadership and I create this kind of a short deck with the biggest trends and I would say high-level trends that happen in strategic business elements that help to get better decision. What is happening in the market, specific expansion, what the competitor is doing right now that might be a future barrier. Are they coming to our field, even if today they're like, I would say, not a direct competitors? Do we see something that happened there and our prospect might choose differently, even someone who didn't think about the competitors? I mentioned earlier the investor communication. CEO and the team really care about new investors, future investors. How do we communicate what we do about the key insights and competitive strengths and all these elements? So I'm ensuring that the language I speak, the way I sliced it, is actually showing the elements that are going to help them with future investment or current investment. And some of the stuff that sometimes I need to tag inside is the product gaps we have today versus competitors, what we miss, what are the common requirements coming from clients that we don't have the way to answer. One of the solutions I built for that, for the executive leadership, was to have this kind of internal roadmap for sellers. They're not going to sell the future elements and feature we don't have, but they're able to speak about where the company is going. So we kind of connect the dots between the field and the leadership. And then there is a question about the KPI enablement to ensure that it's really kind of like using the finding to align the cross-functional teams and KPIs across the organization. So we actually know what the top drivers to win a deal. and we actually know why we lose. And I do the same for churn analysis. And one of the big things we had last year was this: we saw end-to-end processes. What happened in the win-loss insight? What happened in the churn analysis? And for us, we restructured the entire CS organization. We restructured the AMs and account management to ensure that we support the right segment, that we support the right size of the ICP, the right geography, even sellers, and we reshaped some of the element about how the structure look like, how the compensation look like, and where is the focus going to be. So this is the kind of language, and my presentation can be a report or like a few slides, but every time it's the question, is it going to move the needle, and is it what the CEO think is going to be important for him the next year?
Lovely. And I'm afraid I was so excited I could talk on this all day, but we are up to time. So I'm going to wrap us up here. I see there's a bunch of questions in the chat, and we'll try to get back to those folks with them. But for now, I want to say thank you all. I love talking win-loss. I wish we had 3 hours. Sorry for the technical glitches, but that's the fun of doing this live. So thank you all, and have a great rest of your Compete Week sessions.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye, everyone.